the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua, and on this episode, Erik and Lucas, who are licensed professional counselors, will be talking about when your kids don't like each other.
Okay, so we were going to tackle the topic of what to do when you have children that just don't like each other.
Yeah, that never happened.
That's still a mouthful. I want to figure out how to.
You want to shorten it, condense it.
Yeah, I didn't have time to write you a shorter letter. I'm sorry. Yeah, needed to take more time and chunk that down. As you said, those things never happen, right?
Never. You're all the kids you're ever going to have. They're only going to like each other. That's it. No.
No. And it feels like this is absolutely in tandem, kind of from a previous episode of like kids being in competition with each other, right? Because it's just like these are just the things that happen, right? Kids are just not going to like each other. They're going to have, I don't know, would this be unhealthy competition? This isn't exactly competition, is it?
It's not really competition. It's just your kids are going to bicker. They're going to have problems with each other. Human beings have a tendency to not do the right thing all the time. They have a tendency to do the wrong thing, which means they're going to get irritable. They're going to get pissy. They're going to get moody. They're going to be upset with each other. They're not going to like something that the other one has. They're not going to like privileges that the other one has that they don't have. Maybe the other one has things that they have that they don't, that they don't have. They want. There's all kinds of reasons for it, and the basis is human beings, even adults, they just don't get along all the time.
Do we think that this is just kind of a offshoot of like humans make bad choices, and then this is one of the ways in which they like direct those bad choices?
Well, I once heard our dog trainer say that you can have dogs who have grown up together. You can have dogs that have just been friendly. They've just played with each other. They've always been good. And suddenly one day you have a dog fight. And the trainer says nobody knows why it happens.
Oh, interesting. She's seen enough dogs that just like...
It will happen. It's just something a part of being dogs. Something a part of being humans is they're just going to like each other at times. And a part of what you want people to learn is how to be able to get along with people that you don't like just because you need to get along with them.
If we're looking for an alternate title, that might be it.
Maybe that is.
How to get along with people you don't like. I don't know. That's not much better.
I actually I think it's going to catch more people's attention when you put it just the way it is, even though it's long and wordy, because you have parents that are going, oh, yeah, I've got those.
Sure, right. It's very descriptive for a specific, like, oh, yeah.
When I was growing up, my brother and I was the older, he was the younger, we're 5 years apart.
Sure.
So that is right there. A large amount of time, between us. Josh and his sister are, I think, 15
Oh, gosh,
years
those
apart,
are big, significant.
And so he probably didn't experience this in the same way.
Sure.
But I had an irritating little brother following me around.
When you probably had that, like 5 years is like... There's a pretty significant developmental gap between he was born and you're 5.
Right.
And then he's 5 and you're 10.
Right.
I mean, that's like...
And he's wanting to be a part of my world.
Well, you're like the best person in the world as far as he's concerned.
But he doesn't play with the cool toys. Those are the toys I like. He has other toys he likes. And so he's constantly wanting us to play with his toys.
Because he's a developmental stage away from you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm always saying, I don't play with those toys. And so he's wanting to be a part of things. He's wanting to, interact with me. He's wanting to be, in my imaginary worlds. And like you said, he's a developmental stage away. So he doesn't think and play in the same way or on the same level. It creates problems. Now, it's not bad, it just is.
Would you say that this encompassed your relationship with your brother, that you didn't like him?
Yes.
Okay.
Just because, we were such, so far apart. I've known other friends and their siblings were closer in age and they were great friends. I mean, it worked out really, really well. But between my brother and I, it just didn't work well.
And to be clear, we're not saying that the age gap is the reason.
It's not the
reason. You could have people who are close together who also fight
Exactly.
or who are farther apart and get along.
Right. And
But-
again, this is also different for girls than it is for boys. With girls who are close in age, you will have a natural subconscious piece that's going on where the girls are trying to steal the spotlight of their parents from each other.
Right. Kind of see the previous episode that.
And so it happens like them differently. But some of the things that help are that, like my mom was really keen on this. And so every holiday, she would bring out different crafting things, and she would bring my brother and I to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I loved doing crafting things. I loved doing some of the things that they did in school, and she would take some of the exact same projects and have different new twists on them. And then when my brother would get there, I would actually look at him and look at my mom and go, "Why is he here?"
Why is he here? It turns out he lives in this house.
Right. I was like, isn't he from down the street? Why is he here? Why is he still here? What's going on? And she would very nicely but firmly explain that this is your brother and he will be joining us.
She had to explain that this
She
is your
had to
brother.
explain this. And if anyone will be leaving, it will be you, and it won't be fun.
And it won't be fun. That was
So
the draw.
you will be nice.
This will be fun.
Yes.
And you're going to incorporate your brother because it'll be less fun if you don't.
Exactly. And, always in the beginning, I was very like, fine, I'm over here and I'm doing my own thing. And very, very, wisely, my mom would be helping my brother, and then she would kind of move to the other side of the table, and then he would struggle with some different things, and then she would say, "Eric, can you help him a little bit with that?" And so then she would manipulate me into helping my brother.
There's a sentence.
There-
Manipulate me into helping my brother.
Which I'm introducing this tool. There is a good side of manipulation.
Well, I mean, I think about like peer pressure,
Yep.
right? Like this is those,
Peer pressure is always seen as a bad thing, but there are positive ways that peer pressure can be very helpful. There's positive ways that manipulation can be very helpful. By the end of the crafting, I felt closer to my brother, and for the next couple of days, we would get along a lot better, and I would play with him.
Mm-hmm. And so your mom needed to do this like every month.
Like every month, yes. Which, I mean, we've got holidays in most of the months, so there was a crafting thing going on. So I think she had that part down.
Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day,
Easter,
St. Patrick's Day,
St. Patrick's Day.
We're not. And then you get summer
4th of
break,
July.
and then you got 4th of July. I'm at a loss for August.
Now you can use anything, any day that the school gives you off.
Yeah.
And when we were growing up, you had President's Day, you had Martin Luther King Day,
Yeah.
you had Halloween,
There you go.
so you had a lot of things you could work with. During the summer was a little different. She'd just kick us outside.
Sure.
And eventually we would probably play together, because there was no one else to play with.
Oh, sometimes that had the same effect.
That had the same effect at times.
And to be clear, we're not telling you that you have to do crafting activities with
No.
your children. Kicking them both outside or let me rephrase that, going outside with them to play soccer or throw a baseball or teach them how to play chess against each other, right? Oh, expand your horizons here.
The most important part is that you're a part of the group as a parent.
So tell me why that's important.
Because the kids are just reacting to each other. If my mom brought the crafting things to the table and then she said, "There you guys go," and she walked away, I'd have killed my brother. I mean,
that accelerated quickly, Eric.
Right. I mean, it's just like I would not have helped him. I would have taken what I wanted. I would have, locked him in a closet. I locked the babysitter.
I was going to say, we had a different podcast on that.
Right. I would not have had anything to do with him. And so my mom needed to be there to help mold that interaction.
So is this related to the discussion that we've had around, I don't remember what it was, the silly putty? Is that the correct object of if you just let your kids loose with the silly putty, all hell may break loose?
Right.
But if you're there to moderate the activity, there's some really smart guy that talked about, what was it, like scaffolding? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the developmental thing that we're talking about of if you let your kids run loose on an activity, they have a certain level of capabilities. even if we're not talking about their social interactions.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you're there with them, you can provide scaffolding and support.
That's
and
a
you're
great
not,
way.
And you're not doing it for them. You're doing
No.
it kind of like the way scaffolding works. It
Exactly.
doesn't make the building, but it supports the building, and it allows them to achieve greater things than if they were simply solo.
I don't know if you know this, but in our treasure box, we don't have stickers.
Okay. And there's a reason for that.
There's a reason for
And
that.
Tell our audience why.
Kids don't always do the best things with stickers.
What?
Just like they don't do the best things with silly putty.
Yeah, I was
or
just going to say,
slime.
you said, yeah. I
know,
knew the slime story.
We had some stickers that were in our treasure chest, and I've seen kids, and they're looking in there, and then their hands go back, and they'll step back, and they'll look down at the stickers, and they'll go, "I can't have stickers."
Okay.
I mean, it's almost like an addict. I can't have that.
But their face is telling you, but I want it.
They're like, I want that.
I want that, but I can't have that.
We see in our commercials, we see in our sitcoms that, you have these families, and then you have markers and crayon, and you have writing on the walls.
Yeah, the classic, crayons on the walls. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm sitting there thinking, because you see the parents scrubbing things off.
Right. Well, because it's usually an ad for like Magic Eraser or something.
Yeah, and in the sitcoms, they're not even using Magic Eraser. So I'm like, what are you doing, guys? You're not even.
You missed an advertising opportunity.
Well, and you missed a commercial. I mean, come on. And I'm sitting there going, why do they have access to the markers?
To the that would allow them to write on the wall.
Right.
Unsupervised? That's probably the summary there.
And if you look at those sitcoms, it's really not. Now, it is. I mean, the parents weren't sitting there while they wrote on the walls, but my kids didn't have markers until they knew, what does a marker write on?
Sure. And intellectually, my 4-year-old knows the answer to that, but she also can't fulfill the idea in her brain
right
subconsciously. So it ended up on my floor the other day, and I went, oh, those don't go with you into quiet time into your room. Got it.
Right. And now you make that adjustment as the parent.
Right.
And so now you bring this back to siblings. If you see that your kids are not getting along, then maybe they need more time together with you.
With you. That's a lot of work as a parent, Eric.
You're right. Do you have any idea how much work it is to own a dog?
I was literally just thinking about this question the other day because I've had people tell me I cannot and or will not have children because they're too much work. So they alternatively have dogs or cats instead. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I kind of get that, I suppose. But a dog or a cat is never going to come past kind of the intellectual and emotional capabilities of what an 18-month-old, maybe a 2-year-old. But it's
depending on how intelligent.
Yeah, right. It's but then you're stuck there, right?
Yep.
For a dog, they live, 10 to 15 years, but you have a perpetual 2-year-old.
Right.
Hopefully, if you parent well, you have a 2-year-old, and then you have a 4-year-old, and then you have a 6-year-old who's not trying to eat the paint off the wall.
Well, now go even farther. When you're in your old age,
sure, yeah, let's stretch that out.
You have people there who can be there, who want to be there, who want to be a part of your life. It's going to depend on how you interacted with them and how you treated them and how you molded them. I once knew a man who was waiting until his parents were old enough in their age. He would take over being the guardian of them.
There's lots of legal terms, but that gets us to the right conceptual
we'll use that
place.
One.
Yeah.
He was going to put one in a nursing home in one state and one in a nursing home in the farthest state away from the other one. They were not going to be good nursing homes, and he was not going to ever tell them where the other one was at.
There's some emotions fueling that thought process.
And this is a man who is in his, middle years. The molding didn't go well.
Yeah.
Meaning the parents didn't put the time into it. And so now and that's the thing. If you're going to have kids, you're going to have feelings towards them, and they're going to have feelings towards you.
Yeah.
And so if you want to interact with them, if you want to get involved, if you want to do the work, you're going to reap the benefits down the road for the rest of your life.
You're going to reap whatever you sow.
And hopefully
And so
you're
the story-
sowing benefits.
Right. And the story you just said
Right.
is the same.
I knew another man, and his kids were toddler to just into grade school years, and it was a Sunday, and he was watching football, and they were being kids, and they were just in and out of the room he was in.
Oh, yeah.
And he couldn't hear the game. They were getting in the way of the TV, and he stood up and he started yelling at his kids. And he stopped and he said, "I am yelling at my kids, making them cry for being kids."
Well, to the end goal of me watching football.
Well, and that was what he put it to. He said, "I'm doing this over football." And all they're trying to do is be kids.
Right.
So,
They want your attention. They're
Yep,
playing.
They're playing. They're just being loud. They're just doing what they're doing. He made the determination that until they were through the house, until they were graduated high school,
We'll call it 18 for round numbers.
he was going to make them his focus. And when they were graduated, then he and his wife were going to focus more on their life, and he would pull interests back in that he had set aside. And I learned this because one day I said, "Hey, who do you think's going to be in the Super Bowl?" And he goes, "Well, I haven't watched football in years. I don't even know who's still out there."
I can't tell you was his answer.
And then he told me the story as to why.
Yeah.
And
But I
so,
can tell you what my kid did at their last soccer game.
exactly.
Or whatever.
He goes, "I have never missed one of their events. I have never missed sitting down with them. They asked me to do something." And he still, so this gentleman also was in the experimental stage of making beer. So he was making it. So he said, "It's not that my life is my kids. I still have interests in it, but I do my interests when they don't need me."
And you could potentially make the argument, again, like, I don't know how many of our audience members need to hear this, but like, you don't have to give up football when you have kids.
Right.
This guy had another hobby. Yep. You could figure out how to watch football. You could record it.
Yep.
You could
do all kinds of things.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman we work very closely with who is also in the mental health field, and he records. He's a huge Steeler fan. He records the games. He watches
but he doesn't watch
later.
them live. Mm-hmm.
I have to be careful when I'm trying to, because I'm a Rams fan. He's a Steeler. And so I have curtailed my, "Oh my gosh, did you see what happened?" Because he probably hasn't yet.
Because he may not have.
And I don't want to ruin it for him, so I kind of wait for him to tell me, and then I'm like, "Yeah, here's how this went." But the point is, you have to make the determination as to how involved you want to be in your kid's life to be able to help them. If you have kids who don't like each other, you're going to have periods where you're going to need to be involved more to help stimulate that like. Just putting them in the same room is not necessarily going to bring about the same result. When I was in, a supervisor and a staff in treatment centers, which were 24-hour care, there were times where you had adolescents who were fighting on the floor, and you would make them roommates, but you didn't leave them to their own demise. You had staff who were closely monitoring it, and when the fighting and the arguing got a little bit bad, you would pull one of them out and begin the whole process of what's going on. Let's talk about this. Let's work with this. Then they would go back in. Then you might have to pull the other one out. Then you'd work with him on his side. So you're actively involved in the problem-solving process to help mold the communication and to help mold, the behaviors that you were seeing that were not good. Most of the time, that worked out great. But if you have siblings that don't like each other, and I had this happen one time where a family that I worked with, had two older teenage daughters, and they said they won't get along. They're at each other's throats. What do we do with this? And my first answer was, do you have any other rooms in the house?
Because in this scenario, they were in the same, sharing a room.
Teenage girls. They need more things of their own space and their own independence.
And so like this, again, continues to prove the point that we're driving at of you said, in this circumstance, I wanted the problematic children to room together. And in this circumstance, I thought separating them was the right. And so again, toolbox metaphor, right? Sometimes you need a socket wrench. Sometimes you need a sledgehammer.
Now, when we're rooming kids together in treatment, they're boys. When these are girls.
Okay. So that
there
adds
are
kind of a
differences.
layer
Yes.
of, yeah.
Yeah. But the key is if you're going to room people together that are having a problem, you have to be ready to be there to help work through the problem. They have an emotional brain. They don't have the logical brain.
Right.
And so they're going to need problem solving that comes from the logical parts of the brain that help, especially when the dust settles of the emotional components that have been there. Separating them out can be the first way of helping them get along.
Sure.
Maybe the problem is they don't have their own space. Maybe the problem is they've gotten into little ruts of the last one on the bed has to turn out the lights. And maybe when the younger is the first one on the bed, the older is like, no, I'm older. So there's a problem there, right? There's a power component that comes with them being different ages. And I'm like, oh man, can you guys get a clapper? And
not one of the movie clappers.
No, just one where you
lights.
clap and the lights go off.
Clap and the lights turn off.
Which they didn't want to do because then they thought they would get in a clapper fight.
In a clapper fight. Is that, and I have so many thoughts about that sentence.
Right. Where each of them will just clap and the light goes off and the light goes on, the light goes off and the light goes on. And I'm like, 100% they will. Can you get them in one of the spare rooms?
Oh, right.
Somebody go there. Sure. But the biggest point is you got to be involved.
Well,
how much time you're going to spend with your kids is going to help with this.
One of the things you said, I wrote it down. You are actively involved in the problem-solving process.
Yep.
And that's, obviously a fundamental way to describe so much of what we talk about.
Well, we can take a little splinter off of that. You are actively involved as a parent in the problem-solving process because you made them.
Sure.
No, you gave them half of you. Mm-hmm. So half of the problems you've always had with people or siblings, you just implanted it because it came as a part of their DNA. Mm-hmm. And so you've worked through those things. Now you can stop and help them work through some of those things. And the thing is that gives you insight and an angle. Mm-hmm. You've been there through that 50% already of the DNA you gave them. How did you find? What were the secrets you found? What were the ways that work with you? What are the ways that might work with them? How can you impart that to them? Because, honestly, the whole molding of your children is to have a wonderful experience as a family.
And if in an ideal circumstance, if the problem is not being generated by the 50% that you think is you hopefully know who the other 50% came from.
Who can then step in,
or you can consult with,
or you can consult with.
Like, all right, I'm out of my depth. Is this coming from your family?
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
And depending on your relationship with your partner, you may or may not want to use that tone.
And if your partner is not there anymore,
correct. Yeah, and that's why I said in an ideal circumstance.
Yeah, there's going to be different pieces. And there's ways of being able to work with that don't put down the other partner or the other family.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The key emphasis is get into the lives of your kids.
Well, like the two major chunks of parenting that I regularly tell people is there's like the structure and the discipline and the rules and the guidelines and all kind of the hard stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there's the spend time with your kids and color with them and like do things with them and do their hobbies and play games and like and give them hugs and tell them I love you. Right. So there's kind of this hard stuff and this soft stuff.
Right.
And you kind of have to put them together to make like the good stuff.
I'll go back to the treatment center. There was a particularly hard individual that was in there, and that person always struggled to get along with anyone. And one particular summer, we were down on kids and we were up on staff. So we had more staff that needed something to do, and we didn't have a lot of kids in the cottage at that time. And so I brought over staff to our cottage, and we, on Saturdays, they would have, kind of event times and different and, free times. And so we set up these free times to where this particular person would be incorporated into all of these free time pieces, which they normally weren't, because they did not get along with other kids very well.
You had the staff to be like, all right, Johnny, you're coming over here.
And so the staff would, and we'll go into this in another podcast down the road, but the staff that were there were simply there to be able to separate the person off and work through whatever the struggle was, and then help them come down to a baseline of where they were ready to be re-put into the group, and then they would re-put them into the group. Mm-hmm. This went on for a couple of weeks, a month or so, and that individual was able to be a part of groups that they could stay in. Mm-hmm. They didn't blow out of. They didn't erupt on other kids. They didn't attack. They were now actually, people would say, hey, is I'll call her Sally.
Sure.
Is Sally going to be a part of us today?
Right. She had been, kids, she could. Yes, where were you?
We're now enjoying having Sally around. You can do the same thing with your kids. You and your significant other, your husband, your wife, your family members, you can set things up and have people who are just there to be able to, kind of work with the person when they blow up. And maybe if you have 3 to 5 kids, it depends on what tick of the clock it is between, for who's going to blow up at what time. Other people, the kids get sent to them, they work with them, they re-put them back in. It's a whole way that you can help your kids learn to be able to get to know each other and even help each other when they see each other are having a hard time.
So to go back to kind of where we started with this podcast, when you have children who don't like each other, all is not lost. And that's the thing I was thinking of, is like, with so many of these things, if you put in the basics, you can get a better result. Mm-hmm. You can teach your kids to like each other. That's kind of an interesting concept.
You
right?
can.
And that's not intuitive.
Nope.
How can you make someone like someone? Kinda, yeah. Particularly when we're talking about parenting, right, and your children who are developing and who can be molded into, more healthy behaviors, kind of.
Even though I say that I didn't like my brother,
yeah,
when it came to Christmas, guess where I felt that I loved my brother? So the blood bond is there.
Sure.
That current of love, simply because you're the same blood, is there. Mm-hmm. And even I was like, oh gosh, I feel this. I see this. What? I like him? Why? When did that happen?
You were trying not to.
I'm questioning my own current that's going on, going, this, why? Why does this? But it's there. And so it's not that you're teaching them to like each other. It's you're teaching them how to get along, because they already love each other. If somebody took a swing at my brother, guess what? Mm-hmm. It's like, and I would even think about that and go, why is that there? Why is it that only I can take a swing at my brother? I don't understand this.
You had enough awareness to go, wait a second.
Right. One of my friends came over one time and we were playing, and he had a squirt gun and he sprayed my brother in the face. Well, my brother started screaming, and I'm like, it's just water, don't be such a baby. This is why I don't want you around. Well, it turns out my friend had loaded it with perfume.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. He's like, I thought that was okay. And I'm like, no, you don't get to do that to my brother. He's like, but you don't like him. No, no, he's my brother.
That argument played itself out
right
in person. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm the only one who gets to do that, and I'm not going to do that. And I'm going, why am I saying I'm not going to do that? But, and then so there's something inside me going, yeah, you're not going to do that. You wouldn't do that. Mm-hmm. You guys, we have problems, but I don't want to hurt him intentionally. Now, he has body scars and he would argue that, but it was in the competition. It was not my fault. I didn't do it on purpose. So
wasn't malicious.
Yeah, it wasn't malicious.
So teach your kids to like each other, be the parent, and you can.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Empowering Choices Parenting Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, definitely make sure on whatever platform you're watching to give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, and let us know that you're listening and any questions that you may have. And then definitely check out our website at empoweringchoices.community. We have a lot of resources there, including a parenting manual and additional courses that cover some of the content we've talked about today and so much more. We'll see you on the next episode.